To make a move like that, you have to have kahunas and conviction.
Long term, I'm bullish. We could see about a 20% correction next year.
This is Josh Jelinski, the financial quarterback. Don't touch that dial. If you're looking for a relatively safe place for cash, Treasury bills have become more attractive recently. Backed by the U.S. government, Treasury bills or T-bills have terms ranging from 4 weeks to 52 weeks, and investors receive interest when the asset matures. This is from CNBC. Over the past year, T-bills have jumped following a series of interest rate hikes from the Federal Reserve, with the possibility of more to come. T-bill yields have been low since the Great Recession, with the exception of 2018. I think people are shocked that yields are as high as they are. And folks, I mean, if you're stuck at 4% or less at the bank and you want to tie your money up for a year or 6 months, I mean, you can go 13 weeks. Some of the best deals of a lifetime since the 80s, 90s. So currently, shorter-term Treasury yields are higher than longer-term yields, which is known as an inverted yield curve. With what that means is the market is expecting rates to come down in time. What if they don't? Still, T-bills yields are competitive when compared to other options for cash, such as high-yield savings accounts, CDs, or Series I bonds. Of course, the best choice depends on your goals and time frames. Now, how do interest rates affect bond values? Another factor to consider is the current economic environment, including future moves at the Fed. That's because of the inverse relationship between interest rates and bond values. As market interest rates rise, bonds fall. So remember that, what was that thing, Jim, when you were a kid? Is that a seesaw? Yes. So imagine a seesaw. When the fat kid goes on the seesaw, you know, the value of your bonds rise. The skinny kid rises. So the fat kid is lower yields. The skinny kid, higher prices. Now what we have, the fat kid went on the other side. And the bond values come down, fat kid goes on the value side, and as rates go up. Because basically, if you're holding money for a long time, you're going to go to where it's treated best. That's why when the federal government inserts itself into interest rates, people say, well, why do things cost so much? It's because people have been divorced from what money costs. Does that make sense? So people say, oh, the rich get richer. Well, yeah, because you, as the regular listener, have allowed politicians to keep rates artificially low. So money should have a cost. So if you go to a bank, it should cost you 5% or 7% or 8%. There's a risk to holding money. But the Fed has said, hey, we are going to buy bonds to keep rates artificially low. They're not doing that any longer. That's why rates are coming higher, because there's a cost to savings. Also, the beauty of interest rates is now if you're a saver, you're rewarded. Back in the day, it was going to be better to have money under the mattress than to give it to the government or to give it to a bank. Now, there is no incentive to keep your money under the mattress because you make zero, where now you earn interest. Where there was a whole decade, people made 0.01. They're getting used to making nothing at their bank. Your grandmother wasn't used to that. She would get her passbook and she'd get it stamped, and she would complain if 5% became 4.95, if 5% became 5.25. Or maybe that's you. Maybe you are the grandmother. But you get what I'm saying. So there is an inverse relationship from bond values to interest rates. It's another key concept in a bond. It measures a bond's sensitivity to interest rate changes. Although it's expressed in years, it's different from the bond's maturity since it factors in the coupon. The coupon's like what they pay you, the time to maturity, and the yield paid through the term. As a rule of thumb, the longer the bond's duration, the more likely its price will decline. So the fat kid, goes on the other side when interest rates rise. So the longer the duration, the more likely its price will fall due to interest rate hikes. When interest rates decline, though, T-bills won't be able to participate in that market value increase. They will start to underperform investment-grade corporate bonds once recession fears start to fade. But that's not for a while. So, maybe a couple months. Nobody knows. How to pick the right T-bill term. While it's possible to sell T-bills before maturity, it can be tricky to pick the best term based on the current and future economic climate. It's always the Fed. The Fed controls short-term interest rates. There's a website, TipsWatch, where you can track Treasury inflation-protected securities as well, although I think the guy's a financial advisor trying to sell you, according to the article. He said the 26-week T-bill seems to reflect that investors expect continued rate hikes until that point. But terms past the 26-week, such as the one-year T-bill, are still pretty attractive. However, the looming U.S. debt crisis may also affect investors' willingness to purchase T-bills maturing around the deadline. I don't think that matters. Never does. They don't care about, the budget, so they just keep spending. It seems like a very small risk, but people will be aware of that as we get toward the summer.